possible. It physically isn't possible. But basically, that's the equivalent of what he's done. Positive and negative charges that should join together, but instead he's found a way to stabilize them, keep them bioactive and available for 15 months. What that meant was, for the first time in history, we actually have a commercially available version of redox molecules, of which they've been using for 20 years in research. If you like to do a lot more research, there are some reference points there for you. PubMed is a great place. That's the place where the National Institute of Health publishes all peer-reviewed medical studies. Go to Google Scholar. Don't go to Google. That's really just a research. It's not a research engine. It's just a place to look things up, and there's a lot of misleading information on there, regardless of whatever topic you're looking at. And that was where I kind of went and actually got misled by looking at things that were saying, well, this is salt water, it's not useful. And when you kind of search through that information, you realize that it's actually founded on a lot of other principles to market other products, or because they are funded by the pharmaceutical industries who really don't want to support anything that isn't a drug. Dr. Gary Samuelson has his own website. If you love biochemistry, look up the Anti-Aging Conference. That has all those beautiful slides there. You can look at the real biochemistry, or even look at the Autism One conferences, where he talks about the impact of these molecules for our overall health. So he stabilized them and made them something that we could finally use. That patented process was part of that stabilization. In our body, we're making these molecules in less than a nanosecond, and we keep doing that in every single cell. But what they took was the components, as we said, the saline that's inside the cell, that pristine and absolutely matched components. They don't take anything that has any other organic products in it, because it needs to be absolutely identical for us to produce the same thing. And so they take that saline and they put it through a 3-day electrical process where it breaks the bonds of the sodium, the chloride, and the hydrogen and oxygen. And rather like Chinese fire drill, everything runs around and it comes back out as 16 redox molecules. So these things are restructured and stabilized and then put into the bottle. So now we have historically an opportunity to help ourselves, and we don't have to be in a clinical study to do it. How do we know that it's not simply saline? Because if we look at it, the ingredients on the bottle, it's going to say sodium chloride and water. And if you're a baker or you cook or anything like that, you know that ingredients create an end product. So when we bake things like pound cakes, we take our flour and our sugar and we end up with a pound cake. But we don't say that we're eating flour and sugar. We talk about a pound cake. And so why is it when we look at the bottle here that this is not just salt and water? If you see on the top left, Bioagilytics is a third-party validating laboratory. They actually are responsible for validating the purity and consistency of about 80 to 90% of the drugs on the market. And they have to do that because the FDA legally requires the market to actually send those drugs for testing, so that they're, in theory, safe to give out to humans. This company, along with all the other companies in the nutritional component, don't require that, aren't required, but they voluntarily have Bioagilytics test every single batch and validate that what's in there is certified redox molecules, bioactive redox molecules. And there are now about 34 patents on this, so we know that it can't be salt water. You can't get 34 patents on something that's just salt and water. Other places where they're researching it, Research Campus has Dr. Neiman, and they do a lot of the work on the athletes in the human performance labs, along with Duke and Harvard and Pacific Northwest. So let's move on here. Look at that Torrent Lab study, which was really significant. We said that this shifts genes. Torrent Labs actually did a study. It was an 8-week study, and what they found was that they had an 100% positive improvement in 5 gene signaling pathways, a 20 to 31% increase, which is huge. I mean, there is nothing that I've ever seen where it has 100% response, and there is nothing that I've ever seen where the placebo, which incidentally was just the plain saline, not the redox molecules, had no response whatsoever. And what did it change? Well, it's interesting to look that it matches those major diseases that we talked about earlier. The immune system health helped to maintain a healthy inflammatory response. It improved cardiovascular health and supported vein elasticity. It improved gut health and improved digestive enzyme production. And lastly, it modulated the hormone balance for vitality and wellness. For me as a practitioner, I know it doesn't really matter what people are challenged with. It sits in here somewhere. And when I ask people in a room, do you have one or more of these? Many people can actually identify with a lot more than just one deficiency that's going on in their system. And I want to take just a quick look at the inflammatory signaling pathway, because this is like one door opening up 15 other doors. So when we have a positive improvement, we're not simply changing inflammation. We're changing, for instance, serotonin. How many people do you know who have moods that go up and down a lot or aren't always happy? You know, that's where that challenge sits. If they've got digestive problems, we know that that impacts serotonin. How many people don't sleep too well and would love to improve that? Maybe you have a lot of inflammation. That NRF2 pathway is directly connected to our own capacity to produce antioxidants within, not simply take them, but ones that recycle constantly and produce trillions and trillions of these antioxidant benefits, as opposed to simply consuming little tablets with a few that don't really get digested well. How many people have thyroid issues or know people who have thyroid issues? And another one could be, what about the people who are challenged with blood sugar issues? All of these saw, in conjunction with everything else, a positive improvement in those pathways. So we can really help support the body get back to a better level of health. Redox signaling molecules, as we talked about, are essential to signaling both inside and between cells. They're critical to detect and protect and repair and replace unhealthy cells. They are the inflammatory control mechanism. We know that all disease either sits with the cause being inflammation or causes inflammation. So it's a really important mechanism for health. It produces glutathione, something called, which is a master antioxidant. It's also a master detoxifier. And one of ASEA's studies shows that it actually raises that by about 800%. That is an enormously important piece. And the Lancet talked about the fact that if you don't feel healthy and you don't feel energetic, they absolutely prove that you're deficient in these key molecules. Dr. Anne-Louise Gittelman will talk about the fact that these are DNA whisperers that control our gene expression. And remember, that determines our health. Progressive loss is all tied up with the loss of mitochondria and redox and everything together. But people think about the fact that the cells are, if they're healthy, then we're healthy. And whilst that's true, interestingly enough, the environment actually controls the cells. That is what controls the organs and the tissues and the outcome. But our physiology forces our cells to handle whatever environment they're dealing with. But you know what? That fish that's trying to jump from an unhealthy fish bowl with the environment being toxic and hard to let it function, and into a healthy fish bowl really represents how much our cells would love to do the same things. So the more toxic we become in this day and age, the harder it is for those cells to function and do the right thing. We get constant cellular confusion, and maybe you're someone who's been trying really hard to do things for your health, and you're taking lots and lots of supplements, but over time I came to realize that even great supplementation can cause toxicity if we can't clear out that environment that these cells live in. And so it's really changed the way that I'm working with clients in thinking about actually cleaning up that environmental confusion that's going on first off, and then look at the outcome after that. If we're not healthy, it's hard to throw a lot of things at the system. We need to really rebuild the cellular health. And if we look at the differences, we know that there's a different frequency for a healthy cell as opposed to an unhealthy cell. Energy is definitely something that can be proven, and we look at the athletic breakthroughs. Dr. Neiman ran a study, and they actually ran mice to exhaustion, and then they fed them ASEA for about 7 days, and they ran them again. And what they found was that these mice ran 29% further. Well, we know darn well that no mouse is going to run for the sake of it. So it proved that ASEA redox really empowers athletic performance, and so they get a lot of improved endurance and strength and recovery, as well as mental stamina. You don't have to be an athlete, though, to benefit from that. There was certainly a lot of the things that I saw in the first week or two of using this. But we have a lot of Olympic athletes that use this product for that reason. And because it starts with salt and water, therefore there are no banned substances. But here's a power piece. If you're looking and wondering, well, what does this really do? If you're looking at, you know, how do I share this with people? This is a really important piece to look at. If you haven't experienced the Renew 28, the topical version of the liquid, I would advise you to get together with someone and get a chance to experience this. Take that product, that tube, and shake it up a little bit before you use it. Identify if you're someone who's got something that hurts. Where does it hurt and how much does it hurt? Rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And then apply the gel 3 times in the first 5 minutes and wait another 5 minutes and see what happens. This was the product that made me pay attention to the science, because I took it into my clinic and tried it out on my clients, and I was just blown away that it really didn't matter what their issue was, whether this was a hip that was hurting very badly because it was about to be replaced, or whether it was someone who, like the girl in that picture, had a head that was hurting dramatically, whether it was someone who broke a toe that was really uncomfortable and it was very black and blue, or whether it was someone that was having sinus congestion. I invited my clients to let me try this and to give me feedback. And literally it was 100% of people who saw a shift, sometimes so amazingly so that it was really astonishing. This is the thing that can grab your attention and give you a chance very quickly to know that these molecules are really supportive. They're going to be put just where the problem is, and they're going to help that communication start to get back into a better place of health again. So the 2 sides of cellular wellness are the liquid from the inside out, so that we can rebuild these molecules that help us stay in peak performance, and then from the outside in with the Renew 28. Dermatest out in Germany, as well as Stevens and Company over here, both ran studies on Renew 28. This is the skincare version of the liquid. And what they saw was we had a 16% improvement in a 28-day period on skin cell renewal. Well, who wouldn't want to look younger in by 16% in 28 days? Who wouldn't want to have more smoothness and fewer wrinkles and more elasticity? Think about the skin being a reflection of what's happening inside. If we can improve what's happening outside, we know it's also benefiting inside. But the 50% blood flow is huge. That is enormously important for supporting circulation. Now, maybe you've got people who struggle in the winter with circulation. Using this kind of product can really help the body restore a better improvement, and maybe they won't suffer so much. So if you think about the skincare products that we talked about at the beginning, why did they do this? Well, Renew 28 was so impactful for people's skin that we were finding that it was also detoxifying the skin. And so what they realized was that so many products on the market have so much toxicity and so many bad chemicals in there that we wanted to create something that was more synergistic and worked with the redox rather than against it. And so they came up with the 3 products that you see in the middle of that box there. On the left-hand side was a natural cleanser. The middle one was a moisturizer. Now, those 2 do not have redox in them, but they are synergistic. They support the pH of the system, they're oxygen attractors, and they prepare the skin for the redox. And the little one, the smaller bottle on the right-hand side, is a more intensive version. It's kind of about 10 times more intensive. And that's really for fine lines and wrinkles. And you can see, again, results of another study, 100% change in fine lines. Photoaging, everyone who loves to get out in the sun is getting sun damage. So a great way to support the skin against sun damage. And as you can see, no parabens or sulfates. And really, when I looked at the skincare, I was just blown away by how natural and supportive and non-toxic it is. So a really fabulous support for the skin. But seeing is believing. And so this is the results of the 28-day study with the Renew 28. And you can see for yourself, the changes between the skin under the neck here and 28 days later. Skin challenges that people have, when they're young, or even sometimes in their 50s for women, and the hormones changed, inflammation, dropping down. And these things are huge when we're young in particular, because it makes us feel so uncomfortable when we have skincare issues that we feel everybody looks at. And those fine lines is going away on the forehead. This is not just for the face, however, it is also an all-over body skincare. So there's many places that you can put this, in fact, anywhere that you can put this that can benefit from it. So if you would prefer to use it somewhere else other than your face, Here's examples of those changes that you too could see from this. Really amazing. I don't think I know of any other product that really energizes the body to really help it get back to its best self again. But when we come to the drink, I want to set some realistic expectations. This is not a wonder miracle that we're talking about. We're cleaning up the environment of that body. If you think of how congested and polluted that little fish tank was, that's really the environment that's supporting the cells. And so the body is needing that support. Clean up this environment before those cells can actually start to breathe again and really do what they want. And so we know that some people's bodies might jump up and down as they get that cellular environment clean up within the first week, but not everybody's going to see that. So give your body time to clean up the environment, allow the cells to stop suffocating and start to get functioning again, and watch what happens over that. Traditionally, people follow what's recommended on the bottle, probably 2 ounces twice a day. It's rather like a shot glass. And at the end of the first week, we just re-identify what changes have taken place. Do some benchmarking with whoever's sharing this information with you. And notify and kind of look and see what's changed. Maybe you're sleeping better than you were. Maybe you don't get up in the middle of the night like you used to. Maybe you don't fall asleep when you sit down at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or perhaps you now find that your knees are not as stiff. Kind of trying to find out what it is that's beginning to shift. If you're not seeing anything shift in that first week, then we suggest that you can recommend going to more of the clinical level, which was 8 ounces a day, for 2 or 3 weeks, and watch over that first month how things change. 50% of people are going to see what they're looking for in that time, but the body does take time to alter. And so we can't expect things to jump up and change in 2 or 3 weeks, which might have taken us 2 or 3 years to get to. So be patient with yourself and give yourself time. How come this company produces a product like this and actually doesn't take it to the traditional market? Why is this not on the shelves? Well, the company has a really interesting history. It actually began as a business venture. This research that Dr. Samuelson was involved in and finally stabilized was going to be nothing more than a business play and be sold to a pharmaceutical company. But there's a really interesting story as to how they changed their mind and turned down an enormous sum of money and decided that this was actually something that needed to stay in the hands of people and become something that was more mission-driven and legacy-driven. And I would encourage you, if you haven't seen it, to take a look at the Amazing Molecules website and look at the ASEA Genesis video. Because there were 40 people that got the opportunity to drink this in the beginning. 6 of those people were actually considered terminally ill. Their doctors had given up on them and didn't give them long to live. And yet, when they looked at what had happened 2 months later, with the opportunity to drink this, and the company wanted to find out what response people had had to it, response was so amazing in terms of what people were seeing, that those people had actually shared it with another 135 people. And that became the focus of why it was important not to just sell this and let it go to a pharmaceutical company and shut down the access to it for the public. It's an amazing company from that purpose, and it's changed the way it's looking at industry in this field. So I would really encourage you to have a look at that website. 2 years after they turned down the money, they finally ended up creating their own company. And so it was founded in 2009, and it produces all of the products. What you're looking on the left is that we're at the headquarters in Salt Lake City, and on the right, you're actually looking at the manufacturing facility, which they own. It's an FDA registered facility, GMP and NSF compliant, which means there are standards to everything it produces, which are checked. And they actually currently work in 33 countries in the world with 18 global distribution centers. Why is that important? What's important for me is that instead of sitting in my office only being able to work with people that come into my office, I'm able to help and support people all around the world. To date, they've done about $650 million, and they're projected to do over $1 billion because this is increasing in its popularity and its spread around the world. Key important thing. Can this help or can this hurt? 2 key important things to ask about. Why would you use it? We know from millions of dollars of other clinical studies that there is no toxicity to this. You can drink as much as you want. You can't be allergic to it because you're producing it already. It's native to the system. It's not simply natural. Blueberries are natural. but they're not native to our body. We don't produce a blueberry. This is something we're producing all the time. And it has no clinical side effects. We know that there are no drug interactions with it. And so for those of you who might be saying, well, I'm on a sodium restricted diet, and you talked about sodium, so that sounds like a no-no for me. 4 ounces a day is just the equivalent of half a carrot or a glass of milk or a slice of wheat bread. And so we know that for anyone on a sodium restricted diet, that is never something that you're not going to be able to consume. No doctor is telling you you can't eat more than a half a carrot a day. And it's not table salt, so please don't get confused with that. Go back to thinking about saline. If you were in a hospital, no one's going to say, well, we can't put you on a saline drip because you're allergic to salt or you're on a sodium restricted diet. So it's totally safe, and that's what's also incredible. ASEA has a mission. Its mission, as I said, came out of the fact that it realized it had something so disruptive and so important for people that it needed to be protected. And so their change in direction was to better people's lives and be a force for good in the world. This really resonated with me when we started to look at the business aspect of this and what I wanted to do with it beyond simply sharing it with clients in my office. And so the bigger picture would be, you know, what would your life look like? What would this provide for you if it's beyond simply health or anti-aging benefits or athletic benefits? If you're drawn to this company for a different reason, because unless you're a trust fund baby, we know we've all got bills, so we all need income. But a purpose-driven reproductive residual international income from home is a big mouthful, but it's also huge. You know, we trade our time for doing whatever we do, and we get our income and we do whatever we want with that. But very many times people aren't always satisfied with the life that they have and the jobs that they do. This provides an amazing capacity to be able to do something that really influences the health and changes the life of health of people. It can be financial independence, and it could be tax savings. If you're actually just aligned with the company from this aspect, you actually have the capacity to drink at least a case or maybe 2 of this per month, and it's a tax write-off. Who wouldn't want to do that? It also produces time freedom, and I think that that is probably the most fun piece of that, to be able to control your time and decide exactly what you want to do with it, as opposed to having to work for someone else who tells you what to do. Maybe you're drawn to the philanthropic aspect. Every case and every product that's sold here goes in part to support the Advancing Life Foundation. This is the philanthropic arm of ASEA, and those are projects that we currently have running in Ecuador, and the new one in Vision Cambodia, and also the support to Operation Underground Railroad that works to bring children out of the environment of sex trafficking worldwide. Those are amazingly important reasons, and for a lot of people, philanthropy and giving back to the world is something that can also inspire you to be part of this company. Maybe it's traveling the world and having fun with friends. That's another piece that it offers you the opportunity, in the same way that Dr. Silverman, who you can see there doing this speech talk tonight, he's actually in Hawaii as a result of part of this compensation and benefit that we get. But it's a lot of fun. Having friendship and culture is a lot of fun. So where do you see yourself? Maybe you see yourself solely as a consumer because you have a health issue, or you believe that prevention is really important. Maybe you're an athlete and you'd love to see yourself improve your times and your performance and practice more frequently and accelerate and elevate yourself. Maybe you are motivated to help others. Maybe in a modest way you're looking for some additional income, maybe not. Or maybe you have a much bigger view in terms of venture philanthropy. Doing something that can influence people beyond where you live, and in so many different ways. And that's the inciting and inspiring piece. We support people wherever they are and with whatever they choose. And so I would just encourage you to find out from the person that shared this with you and talk with them about what this might mean for you. I hope that you would at least acknowledge, and it would make common sense to you, that this is a great way to rebuild something that's essential to your health, if nothing else. It certainly made a common sense to me that this was really kind of a no-brainer, and it's been an exciting journey over the last 2 years to see the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that we've been able to share this with around the world. Something I could never have done by simply continuing to work in a practice in Charlottesville, Virginia. And so if you still want more information, here's some other websites. The Redox Breakthrough is a great video, which you'll get to see some really amazing experiences, hear from about 11 or 12 doctors and listen to the science. If you like to look at experiences, you can go to the redoxexperiences.com and put in the password experiences. You can research other people's feelings and results that they've had with outcomes in their health, and those are pretty amazing, and you'll see them listed alphabetically. Amazing Molecules, which has that ASEA Genesis video, also has a lot more research and a lot more resources there for you to research. If you're not already on the ASEA Healthy Self Facebook group, ask the person that shared this information with you to add you into that. We're probably about 100,000 people currently posting information, and you know, their stories are very moving, and I'm sure that you'll find something in there that relates and resonates with you, or maybe somebody that you're thinking about. And feel free to add other people to that so that we can pass this information on and we can bless the lives of others, because it truly does bless the lives of others. And I will just close for a second with a story of somebody that I was introduced to through someone else who had had breast cancer. This had been pretty invasive for her, and it had progressed not simply from the breast cancer but into the lungs, into the ribs, and eventually she'd been given an option to remove her right arm. I shared some of the websites that I've given you this evening, and I said to her, go take a look at that and you know, give yourself more information about what this was. And remember, she was not somebody I knew, she was someone I was connected to help give her information and help answer her questions. And she went away and she looked at one of the videos that Dr. Gary Samuelson had talking about the redox breakthrough and these molecules and how impactful they are for our health. And she called me up and she said, she thanked me so much, because she said it was just so amazing to listen to him. And then she said the one thing that has continued to empower me every day. She said, I kept thinking, what if someone had shared this with me a year or so ago before I lost my arm? What if? And as you can see, it moves me so much, because in that moment, I realized we change people's lives when we share, and we change people's lives when we don't. And so I would just encourage you, if you are inspired to embrace this and you see amazing experiences for yourself and you think of a friend, give them the opportunity to learn, because that's all we ask. And I'm going to close off my sharing screen for now, and I have the opportunity to answer any questions for anyone on the call this evening. So feel free to unmute yourselves, and if you have any questions, I hope to answer them.
Hi, Carolyn.
Yes. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, great job. We have someone out in Alaska that just started, and I think they're having a little like anxiety or something. I don't know if that's part of detox or whatever.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I mean, definitely, you know, when we're clearing out the cells, you know, it kind of gets cloudy like that fishbowl. And, you know, sometimes some people, that is how they express their detoxification. I mean, obviously, we know traditionally that people can feel tired, or they can feel flu-like, or they can get a headache, you know, feel pretty lethargic. Sometimes their joints will ache. I mean, and that's not typical specifically to ASEA. That's just the process, and I'm sure you're aware of what the body goes through when we're clearing out that environmental junk that's in there. And so, you know, just encourage them to really drink a lot of water. I don't know what their, you know, what their water capacity is. I mean, obviously, if we clean out and we push stuff into the blood system, we really want to get it out of the house as fast as possible, right? And so keeping hydrated and allowing ourselves to flush it out through the kidneys is the best thing. If that does not help, and sometimes I'll say to people, spraying it, if they have a spray bottle, spraying it on their tongue once or twice every half an hour can help that detox process, and that's something that Dr. Samuelson suggests. The other way is to back it down a little bit. You know, I don't know if they're doing 4 ounces a day, maybe do 1 ounce 4 times a day, so that the shift is not quite so dramatic. Occasionally I've had people who've been very toxic, and we've had to really work very gingerly with them, even as low as a teaspoon at a time. you know, increasing that every third day by a teaspoon, because sometimes people just need to step into that much slower. If they haven't done a lot to support their health over a long time, or they live in a toxic environment, or they've smoked, or they've, you know, you're around the pollution that's going on in the environment, maybe they have a lot more to clean out than somebody else. But anxiety is definitely something that can go up a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Hi, Chris.
Yes, the question is this: what happens if a person gets on the product and then for financial reasons or something like that, they have to stop? Will they be worse off than before they started, or what will happen to them?
Great question. No, they won't be worse off. So think about wherever they were when they begun drinking. That is their baseline. That is the level of health that they are operating at. And so let's suppose that their health was kind of 60% instead of 100. If we could all be at 100, that would be fantastic. But let's suppose that their health was diminished to a 60% level. And then they consume the molecules, and this helps repower everything, and they begin to rebuild those essential molecules. They'll start to see an improvement. Suppose they go up to what they might feel like is 80% of what they used to be like when they were young. If they stop, their body will just go back to wherever it was originally. It won't be worse. It will just be that your body will be what it was before you started. They will get some benefit. I mean, because cells are changing. We know from the blood serum level studies that absolutely this is a 100% shift within the blood work. So something will have changed and something will have improved, but you know, operationally they'll just kind of feel much like they did before. I hope that one helped. Luciana, are you trying to speak? Because you're on mute if you are.
Thank you. You hear now?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Good morning from Australia, Gold Coast here.
Good morning.
Good morning. My daughter is having molecules now, the redox, finally since January. I am with the company. And last night, my fridge got a problem, and the ASEA was frozen this morning. It will still work?
Yes, it's still fine. You can freeze it and not have a problem in the same way that we can freeze the tubes of gel and make use of them that way. The only thing that would deteriorate it is if you put it in direct sunlight and excess heat. It's fine inside the boxes, but you wouldn't want to leave the pouches or the bottles or the tubes sitting right in the sun for any length of time. But it's perfectly fine with it being frozen.
Okay, and I have my best friend, and her little boy have intellectual disability, and I'm trying to explain to her how ASEA could really improve whatever is it that she's already doing for him, for his development. Can you have a little bit more information that I can pass for her regarding to intellectual disability or any disability issues?
So you're talking about cognitive issues for children? Is that cognitive issues you're talking about, or you're saying you're looking for what do we know about what might change for someone with a defined intellectual disability?
Yeah. He's 4 years old, little boy.
Oh. So has he been defined with a label of some sort, you know, which might be challenging in school?
He is starting school now in Montessori system. She's doing speech therapies twice per week and gymnastics to him, and she's investing a lot. She has been last 4 years in a huge research, and I really would like her to try ASEA. She was here with me this weekend, and she finally took one Renew 28 after months. I'm trying to, introduce ASEA for her and her husband. So now she's applying Renew 28 on her meridians. I asked her to do that twice a day. And I was thinking that I really would like her to try ASEA water for nebulizing and spray on him and drinking if it's possible, if he can accept. But I would like more information about how ASEA can work in his development to improve his development.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Samuelson talks a lot about the fact that these molecules cross the blood-brain barrier. So he will say that they're very impactful for cognitive health. And I know that if you look at a lot of his talks, he talks about the fact that he only wishes that we were in a situation where this was available in the ER for when people have head injuries. But if we look at a very foundational level, everything in our body is a cell, right? And every single cell produces these molecules. And so we need to really be very cognizant of the fact that it isn't about specific issues and diseases or challenges that does it work for this or does it work for that. It's going to rebuild the function of every cell. We're going to put them back in. And I know that child is young and technically shouldn't need them, right? But we have lots of experiences. If you go look in the ASEA Healthy Cell, I know that you'll see a lot of children's stories in there. Go look at the work that Dr. Samuelson does, but I would just encourage them to use it and see what their own outcome is. You know, all of us, I'm sure, have been in contact with children that we have seen go from one place to another and improve. We can't diagnose or treat or cure with this because we're in the nutritional industry and not a drug. Yeah. But if we're logical about the fact that the environment dictates the outcome of the cells are involved in the gene signaling. You know, we know that environment and damage and diet turn off those genes. So we want to really just help empower that. And so I would encourage them just to do what you were saying, get them to drink some, apply it to the back of the neck and cognitively over the head. All of those things are really going to be supportive. Try and get it as close as they can into the scalp. Down the back of the spine, on the soles of the feet, around the ears, for any of those things for children, if they're not really into wanting to drink it or it's harder for them to embrace it. That's a kind of transition you can still make a big impact for them. So we're at 9:45. I need to be mindful at 9:50 we have a closeout for the in-home. So if we have, do we have anybody else who has a question? We're good.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Carolyn. We try